something kind of cool happened to us this week. We've been staying at this Airbnb.
Yeah.
Up Island in Cow Bay, which is a really, really gorgeous little vacation spot. And it's the second time this has happened this year. We got 2 free Airbnbs. Like, being a realtor is awesome. There's lots of perks, but we never really got perks like this before, right?
Yeah. It seems
just clients giving it to us.
Yeah.
Because they had a gap in their scheduling.
Yeah. This one's cool though because I actually sold the property to them. It was a crazy hectic transaction.
Yeah.
But being in there this weekend or this past couple of days, I could really see their vision for the property. Like they've turned it into something amazing. Yeah. It's magical there.
Right on the ocean.
Yeah. Hey, shameless plug, Breeze and Boy, Airbnb, Couch and Bay. Everybody should stay there. It's amazing.
Yeah. And we did have to drive back in to do this today and then take the little guy for his last day of school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, but he did have a little bit of an accident, fell off the dock into 2 feet of water, whatever, just scraped up his legs. But he's got this huge bandage on his leg now.
Yeah. Poor little guy.
It's just minor scratches, but a huge bandage. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to think of at school.
I think a lot of kids fall off stuff. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, last day of school, summertime is about to get started. I'm excited. It's my favorite time of year.
Yeah. All right. Now, how about an amazing segue into what we're going to talk about?
Take it away.
I forgot what our first one was.
Coming at you with a...
Oh, awesome. I love it. Listen, so today actually, okay, despite how light and cheerful we just were, I'm actually going to get into a shit list story. The husband in this story is on my shit list. And like, to me, this is literally the worst, probably one of the worst real estate experiences that I've been involved in. And I mean, I've been involved in like estate sales and like, foreclosures and stuff like that. This one sticks out to me because I don't think I've ever dealt with a couple where one party treated the other party so horribly and with like just such a complete lack of disrespect. And I just hadn't really ever witnessed like a marriage like that before. So sorry about that, guys. I had to pause for a second because we had to switch out vases. We just realized that we got the same vase, and that won't do. That simply won't do for our podcast. So
you don't need to apologize.
Thanks, Greg. So we got this wonderful new vase, and we are ready to rock and roll.
On with the show.
Okay, so I'm in an open house. And a fellow comes in, and he is, he wants to sell the house next door, needs a realtor, nothing too unusual so far, so good. We set up an appointment, and I set up the appointment to go in and look at his place and then talk to him about what his goals are, get the ball rolling. So he says he's got the house next door to the one I'm open housing to sell.
And a lot of our agents complain that, it was just a bunch of neighbors that showed up. Neighbors are awesome to show up at an open house.
Totally.
Because they're probably homeowners.
Pro tip.
Not where you were going with the story.
Yeah. No, that was like a valuable freebie right there. Neighbors, and again, that might show up in another podcast, but you want to play to your neighbor strategy because, they have houses too, or probably presumably live in houses too. Great one. Great pro tip. So anyway, I go over to his home, meet him and his wife, go over the whole thing. And everything's okay still at this point. They are currently living in a home. They have 5 kids, 5 boys, ranging from the ages of 6 months to, I think, 16 years old at this point in time. So like, it's a busy household. Set it up, get the listing contract signed for the house they're living in. But the second property that they have to sell is in her name only. And every time I go in to say, hey, so can we set up, can we get the contract for the other property going as well while I'm here? She's kind of deflecting. So she's not flat out saying no, but she's kind of deflecting. And she's like, now's not a good time. You need to go see it. Obviously we're going to ask for the contract, a couple of times. So I probably went, asked about it about 3 times, 4 times. And every time she's deflecting. So at this point, we kind of
But for
put
you,
it off.
this is, so there's 3 transactions that are going to happen here.
Yeah, so there's the 2 home sales and a purchase, and so the goal of this fellow is that he wants to like sell everything, amalgamate into one large property. Anyway, so we set up a time for me to go down, look at the other property, which is in the wife's name. It's solely in her name. And we get there, and of course I bring the contract thinking like we're going to get this going and get it listed at this time. And she shows me around the house. He's there as well. We sit down to sign, and she breaks down crying. So I'm thinking like, this isn't great. This is not usual. And I don't know what's happening. I have no idea why the emotion. And sometimes people get emotional, and she starts saying things like, this was my house before I got married. And she's just getting really emotional about it. And then he starts yelling at her. Like, I'm talking like, what's that like training stuff? When you're doing boot camps, like those training boot camps, there's like a coach like in your face. Yeah, like drill sergeant style. He's like yelling at her, sign the contract, sign the contract, sign the contract. And she starts breaking down and sobbing uncontrollably. So I'm like, clearly we can't move forward. There's some very clear and explicit duress going on here. I've never seen anything like it. And he's like literally like grabbing her hand, putting it on the paper. Like it was just awful. So at this point, I kind of just take the contract back, and I'm like, hey, clearly we can't do this today. There's some stuff that needs to be worked out. And I just said, let's just pause here and leave it alone. And so I did ask her for her phone number, because up until this time, I'm only communicating with the husband. I have met her. I know she exists. I know that she's a part of this thing, but obviously I just witnessed some very, very harsh duress. So I'm like, okay, let's just pause. So I get her phone number, and then the next day I give her a call, like in the middle of the day, and I'm like, hey, so I'm getting a vibe like you don't really want to sell your house. Can we talk about this? Like, what's happening? Can we talk more about this? And she just starts breaking down, and she tells me that the house is the only thing she owns in her name.
Right.
She's afraid to sell it because once she sells it and buys the like the property with her husband, she will have nothing to her name only, and he'll have full control of her life. She also tells me that she gets a $20 a week allowance from him, that he controls all the finances in the household, and she's terrified of letting her house go and being completely independent. Like she felt like she needed a safety out. So obviously this is a lot of information, like information I really, again, is not my exact domain to handle. But I'm really worried about this lady. Like I was so worried about her. She's like, I haven't been in the workforce for 16 years. I've had kids this whole entire time. Like she had no independent income, nothing. Right. And so she's like, but he's going to make me sell it at like, she's like, I'm only going to be able to like hold off for so long. Like this is going to happen, and it's going to happen within a month or so. So we had a huge heart to heart. I think we were on the phone for like an hour and a half. I'm pretty sure I probably started crying at some point during the conversation. Like I just feel so awful for this lady. And so I had a couple of sleepless nights after this, and I just said, okay, don't sign anything. Let's just wait until we figure out a way that this can work for you. And I was kind of like trying to think through ways that this could work for her. And then, in the end, basically the way that this kind of worked out is I ended up pairing her with a financial advisor. And I don't even know what all the products are. I'm not sure. But what, and a great female financial advisor where she could feel safe and where she could kind of tell her story and her goals with what she would do with the money. And what we agreed to was, or not we agreed, but what we proposed to her was that she take some portion of cash. I think they were going to make like $500K off the sale of that house. So we proposed that she take like $150K, make an agreement with him, have some kind of agreement done up at the lawyers. I'm not going to specify all these different agreements because if you know anybody going through this or something like this is helpful to you, know that you need to talk to a lawyer and a financial advisor to execute what's right for you in your like market area, your province, your country, whatever. But here's the general structure of the solution. So basically, she kept $100K back. She put it in a financial product that he would not have access to when the home sold. And it was all done in agreement in conjunction with her lawyer and her financial advisor before she would sign the listing contract. So all of that got done. And then she had some peace of mind to know that like if the house sold, if all of it hit the fan and she had to bail and get out of that situation, she had a nest egg of money that she could take off with and be safe with.
Right.
And that was the way that listing got done. He didn't love the situation, but we held firm that she was not selling the house without something like that.
Yeah, sure. And I think that we see, couples with a lot of anxiety over going on title with the other person. I mean, it's a big commitment. This one just is a little bit scarier, a little more terrifying.
It was so much more terrifying. And because they were already married too, it kind of caught me off guard. Like sometimes you can talk about like trust agreements and stuff when you have a fresh couple coming together or two people coming together. But the fact that they were already in this situation and already married, it really took me off guard.
Right. And so we don't see this or you probably don't see this very often, or it happens behind the scenes mostly when someone is actually, there's a lot of pressure, some duress to sign something they may not want to sign.
Yeah. And I think like, so, this also like you kind of talk about the legalities of something versus the ethical parts of something. Like the reason this guy is on my shit list, well, number one, he was like drill sergeant yelling at his wife to sign a contract she didn't want to sign, like right in front of me. That was really awful. But then, we started doing some home showings because before we got to all the like paperwork side of things, I thought maybe if she went out and saw some houses that they would be moving into, I thought maybe she was just nervous about wondering where they were going to go. And if she saw some places, he treated her like garbage during the showings. Like literally if he didn't like a house, he would run out, like walk really quickly out of the house. And if she didn't get in the car, by the time he was in the car, he would drive away. And there was a number of times where we stood there and she was like, I'm like, how about I drive us to the next house? And she's like, no, I'll just wait it out or else he'll get even more mad. And I was just like, wow. Like I was genuinely, I'm not kidding when I say I was concerned for this woman and concerned for her safety. And I could totally see why she might need, some like money to bail if things got really bad.
Right.
Yeah. So that was, definitely duress. Secondly, just like, you're witnessing something really horrible, like happening right in the midst of stuff. And I was like, okay, I got to figure out a way to do this that's protecting one party, even though they're both my clients. Right. I mean, obviously he'd ended up agreeing, but
that brings up another kind of, obviously that is an abnormal situation.
Yeah.
But often you get into a situation where there's a husband and wife, or maybe a brother and sister, or a family member, or even kids and parents. You really need to determine who's going to be the decision maker for that process, whether you're out showing or whether you're listing a house. Like, who is going to make that decision? You could get somebody really motivated that's talking a big game, but ultimately they can't do anything.
Oh, totally.
Maybe they don't have the money, whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And again, like walking into this, it was just like, oh, this is going to be a regular old day at the office. Sure. Let's go into this. And then next thing you know, the person who's like wanting one of the transactions to happen is not in legal signing power. The person who is in legal signing power doesn't want the transaction to happen. So again, this is an extreme example, but you get, for example, kids. We're kind of like a university town, so we get kids that, parents buying places for their kids to go to university. Yeah. And you'll get like an excited kid that's like, hey, my parents are shopping. Yeah. And you're like, are they though? Are they? And, or, they maybe are looking for something in a $600,000 or $700,000 price range. And their parents are like, your budget's $350,000.
Or the other way around, where the parents found, the cheapest place on the market. And like, kid will be fine there. And they're like, nope, I'm not leaving, dorm housing for that piece of shit.
Yeah, totally.
We get a lot of online leads, and often we'll have somebody's aunt or somebody's sister saying, my sister has to get out of that place she's living. Can I get in the car with you and go look at some places? And the sister just doesn't want any part of it.
Parents for kids, siblings, you'd be surprised how many people want to like get their noses into somebody else's home purchase. Totally. Yeah, so definitely vetting, understanding who your true decision makers are and making sure that you're aligned with their goals and their purpose is number one. Because you can even go looking with one spouse. I mean, back to like the marriage example, you can have one spouse that's so on board with a home or a sale or whatever, and then you can have another spouse that wants nothing to do with it and like would want to stay where they are or doesn't like the property or whatever. So you have to be you have to have both decision makers on side. And make sure you know, like we literally in our script flat out ask, are you making this purchase with anybody else? Are you doing this sale with anybody else? Is there anybody else on title? It's important to just ask that question. And if they say yes, you want to know, is that person going to be there when we sit down to do our consultation or when we sit down to write our contracts?
Yeah, and
to sign.
Like you're saying, purpose, but it all comes down to one of our 4 power stats, which is motivation, right? Is that motivation generated by a family member or is that motivation generated by the decision maker?
That's a great point because we often talk to this idea of like manufacturing motivation. So especially when you're talking, if you're only talking to the party that is so excited to get something moving or push something forward, if you're only ever talking to that party, the whole thing, and I've seen agents spend like a month showing property to the one party and then, all this time dealing with the one party. But if there's another person that's got to come in on the transaction or parents co-signing, whatever, if there's another person that's got to come in on the transaction and you don't get their kind of position from day one, you could find yourself in a completely different situation. Like you could have spent month showing property and then realize like it's not in their budget or they don't want it or whatever, right? So huge.
Yeah, just a quickly anecdotal story here. We had 2 agents on our team when we just got these through online prospecting, and one of our agents was talking to the wife, one was talking to the husband, totally separate. They signed up separate. They were just doing their own home search. Yeah. And then each one of them, our agents are trained to say, are you working with another realtor? And it came down to like both of them, and they because our agents did such a great job, both of them didn't want to lose the one that they had already built a relationship with.
Oh, yeah, right. So
little
the
did they know
saying
they were on the same team.
That they're asking the husband, are you working with the realtor? And then they're asking okay.
Yeah. And our agents were able to collaborate and work together to get that deal done.
Right, yeah.
And it was great, but it could have been awkward.
Yeah. So like think of the gap in communication there where you've got 2 parties that are actively searching with 2 different realtors.
Yeah.
Both of them are going to buy one house together, presumably. Mm-hmm. And there's still that huge divide of like the process and how they're even going to go about looking for the place, let alone signing on the dotted line. Like that's crazy.
Yeah. To take this one step further for the couple we started talking about, you had to probably treat each person like in conversations with, each of them. You treated them a little bit different based on their personality. Kind of had to identify some of their dominant traits. We do a lot of training with DISC. I think a lot of teams do with the DISC assessments. Totally. And just being able to identify, what type of person you're dealing with and try to meet them where they're at.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. So meeting people where they're at their place of need is huge. And then, okay, so this is kind of going...
Or even how they like to present in the world, like how they go out into the world, whether they're a driver type personality or someone that's a little bit more high C, so they're more kind of detail oriented.
Yeah, 100%. And like if you don't know what what the DISC assessment is, or if you're not like using that in how you relate to clients, definitely get familiar with it. But so like, yeah, if you've got different personality types that that somebody is like, we're saying driver in this case, but so if that somebody's a driver, that you have to give them undetailed information. That they're going to make decisions very
meandering
quickly.
Stories about the last time you saw a swan.
Yeah, you are going to have to get to the point, and you're going to have to be like, you're going from point A to point B. Here is the shortest way for you to go from point A to point B and get the job done. That's how you deal with a driver, right? But yeah, so like if you're dealing with, a high I or that interpersonal personality, you cannot lean in for a kiss before you have bought them dinner. You cannot. That person's going to think you were rude. That person's going to think that you were pushy, and that person is not going to like you. And we know that high I personality needs to like you before they'll do business with you. So they want to hear about that swan that you saw in the park. They want to hear stories about your kids. You are going to have to look at every picture of their dog that they currently have on their phone before you have permission to do business with them. So when you know this, you can cater your style. And so, we're kind of coming back to like figuring out the decision makers, because even inside of that transaction, both of those decision makers could very well have different styles of doing business. And you're going to have to like kind of be the intermediate, and you're going to have to meet the driver at their place of need, the way they want to do business. And then you're going to have to simultaneously meet the other person in the relationship, whatever we're using, I as, the interpersonal as the example here. You're going to have to meet them at their place of need, the way they do business. But you could get someone that's overly analytical, and you got to email them graphs, and, so identifying that inside of the one transaction with the different decision makers is going to be huge.
And as a good salesperson, you have to kind of be a chameleon that way, right? Like,
yes.
You are a higher D, maybe higher I, but it doesn't matter when you're dealing with someone. You can't let your kind of preference run the show.
Yeah. If you're not analytical, figure out a way to get analytical, so when you meet all your high C personalities, you can speak their language.
Yeah.
It's almost like you have to kind of not check your personality at the door, like you want to be authentic or whatever, but you have to be able to bring
authentic or whatever.
Yeah. Or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, but I know, like, when we go shopping, or when you go shopping for a house, and then you're kind of, you're wanting just the facts kind of thing, or you're not wanting a sob story about who owned the house for the last 4 generations.
Well, okay. So when you and I are shopping for our own properties, it's a totally different dynamic. Like, you and I would shop totally differently. Like, I want to walk through the house. I want to redesign it in my mind. I want to spend an hour there. By the time I've gone through 2 rooms, you've been up and down the whole house, circled the yard, checked out the garage, and you're back in the car waiting.
Or driving off.
Yeah, driving. No. Oh, too soon. But you know what I mean? Like, your different personality. Yeah.
Well, generally, I don't come to any showings until we have an accepted offer.
Yeah.
I'm like, then I'll make a decision. I trust you. I trust you, but you're the one who
Greg
makes all the decisions.
will not come and see a house that I like or he won't come to the showing tours until I've narrowed it down. So, like, if we had a realtor, I would be the one shopping, and they would only see Greg at the one interval where Greg's either going to make or break the whole deal. Like, you're either going to say yes or no, and in one fell swoop. Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I trust you're making good house decisions. You do this all day, every day. So
sure. Yeah. But I mean, if somebody was working with us, they would have to know that
you're the decision maker.
Yeah, I'm the decision maker. And then when they do get you and get access to you, they would have to make sure they understand your entire position in a very short period of time, because they're not going to have access to you again until the next house you decide to kibosh yet again. Right? Yeah,
that's right. That sounds exactly how it goes down. And we've done this quite a few times, so it's a pattern. It's now officially a pattern.
It's a pattern.
That's how we work.
Totally. Hey, I love that word, pattern. That's great. So figure out the patterns. Figure out the personalities, so you can figure out their patterns and how this is going to flow for you. And this is like, aside from their motivations, this is like just once you know their motivation, now how you're going to service that.
Yeah, so maybe just to bring this back, there's a lot of reasons why people could be under duress for writing a contract. But in this specific scenario, what can you kind of look out for?
Well, screaming people, that was, I mean, like, just, I know we're kidding, but just in all seriousness, like, you are, so the big lesson, or the big theme of today, this was a horrible situation. It was a horrible situation.
And you were a relatively new agent at the time.
Yeah. This must have been like my 3rd deal or something like that, right? So, it's recognizing that this is, the situation that's happening, because we literally get hit over the head with compliance and in the PDP courses, and you get the textbook version of what duress might be. Yeah. And I think oftentimes we probably expect it to show up with elderly, like where, maybe there's like elderly people who are being forced to sell a home by their kids or whatever. Like, and so it showed up in a very different way, a very harsh and different way this time. But, being in real life situations where you can look at what's happening and go, hey, this person's under duress. And as their realtor, my job's not to just get this thing sold out from under them and hope for the best. My job is to do the best I can for these people and be in genuine service of them, right? So, stopping, identifying it. Once you know I'm in a situation where somebody's under duress, you want to figure out what professionals you need to loop in so that you can resolve the situation to the best possible outcome.
As an agent, you have to use reasonable care and skill, but then as a human, you've also got to identify this pretty quickly and
Yeah, because it is your fiduciary duty, but then also just like a human duty as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. So then bring in the professionals you might need, right? So you're going to probably need a financial advisor that's advising what
and I think on this
happen.
one, because you were a newer agent, you lent on your managing broker just to run everything by, like you were the one representing them. But...
Yeah, a little bit, but to be honest, I did come up with the solution on my own. I'm not here to just toot my own horn or anything like that, but again, like your managing broker may be able to walk you through some of this stuff, but I want to say, and certainly check with your broker, but like, let's talk about what you need to do. This is what you have to be able to do.
Yeah, they're great for the compliance stuff, but to actually help this woman out, you had to come up with some creative solutions, and get the right people involved.
That's right. And so it's like, you've identified it. You get the financial advisor involved. Get a lawyer involved, right? Like I would say, the lawyer should probably be, like your probably your first call right off the bat. And then sometimes you'll need to get like an accountant involved, just depending on what other things might be going on. And if it is a scenario with like elderly people, you may even need to get, a lawyer will be able to handle most of it, but you might have to start thinking about executors and things like that. So that would be really your starting point. So talk to a lawyer, talk to a financial advisor, talk to an accountant, and, if there's need of an executor, then an executor, or like a third party, maybe even mediation, something like that. This could have escalated. This could have gone to a place where they stopped talking to each other and stopped being on the same page. And quite frankly, I think that she had every right to feel like, no, screw you, I'm out. But she, for her family, wanted to find a way to have a peaceful resolution without feeling like she didn't have a security or a safety net if things did go really wrong.
Yeah, we don't really have a lot of shitless divorced couple. Well, we got maybe a couple for a future episode. Maybe something we talk about. I don't maybe not talk about divorce right now, but
yeah. If you see something happening, I think that's the main thing I'd like people to take away from today. Don't just turn a blind eye, and don't feel like, hey, this isn't my problem and I can't really do anything. This isn't my job. I think it's really important to realize that, you're in a role where you kind of have this fiduciary duty, but also a duty to provide something holistic to people, because this is their homes. This is where they live. This is their security. These are their life savings. There's so much tied up into this. And like that woman, her house was all she had in the world. And the fact that, think about it, she couldn't work for 16 years because she was at home with her kids. And then literally it looped into feelings of like, I'm no longer valid in the workforce. I have no independence. I can't be that independent woman that can feel empowered to leave a bad situation. And that house was the only thing like literally holding her together and feeling like she had something. And so if you see that, figure out solutions for people. These are the moments where the rubber meets the road. And oftentimes you're going to get information, or you're going to see glimpses into these scenarios where on the outside, friends and neighbors aren't ever going to know looking in, because they're not having these conversations like this with people. They're not getting them to sign their life savings away or whatever. So I think if you see this happening, if you see somebody under duress, stop and investigate. And hopefully it leads to a solution, like, that can just be easily done. And hopefully you don't, it's not awful, but you may have to choose to walk down that path and just make the hard decisions and be there in a really difficult moment for your clients.